Could we see a huge trade between the Calgary Flames and the Los Angeles Kings, swapping 2 mega contracts to get a fresh start for each player and helping out each team? We'll discuss how that could work and how it might benefit all parties involved. Plus, we have a major update as well on the Jerard Tavares tax case with Canada Revenue, which could see him end up having to pay an extra $8 million in taxes. We'll discuss the latest update there, plus tons of news off the ice involving many NHL teams, including a big announcement in Columbus regarding Waddell taking over their hockey operations. We have a new head coach in Seattle. We have a signing in St. Louis, a major signing in San Jose for top prospect Will Smith. Plus, we're going to discuss the latest happenings in the Stanley Cup playoffs. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to cover here today. Let's start with the latest happenings in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. We saw the Dallas Stars take a 2-1 series lead last night against the Edmonton Oilers, winning Game 3 in Edmonton. It certainly didn't look like that was going to be the case, as a hot start for the Edmonton Oilers got the crowd going, the team was going. McDavid came out flying in the first period. Oilers were dominating. Got an early 2-0 lead from goals from Zach Hyman and Connor McDavid. Things were looking like it was going to be a landslide victory for the Oilers. Unfortunately, you knew Dallas was going to find a way to push back, and things would, find a way to get a little bit tighter and closer as the game went on. And Dallas did exactly that. They came out in the second period and started playing a lot better, and Edmonton kind of didn't have a response, unfortunately for them. The Stars took over that second period. They scored 3 goals, and I think it was around 4 minutes or so. It was just bang, bang, bang. 2 goals from Robertson and 1 from Wyatt Johnston. And just like that, not only was the game tied, but the Stars had the lead. The lead that the Oilers had opened up, and all that momentum had evaporated. The building went from being rocking to quiet, and it was a completely different game. The Oilers did find a way to get the game tied up before the end of the second period. So you're going into the third period in a pivotal game in the series with it all tied up. So at the end of the day, most teams would take that you kind of each won one period, but the Oilers still in the second or third period I wouldn't say they struggled, but it still wasn't great play. Jason Robertson completes the hat trick for the go-ahead goal, which was kind of a weird goal where he was shot on a weird angle off the backside of Stuart Skinner and into the net, which was certainly a bank play that was deliberate. He credited the goaltender coach for the Stars for giving him some intel and idea to try that type of play as well. And just like that, they had to lead. The Oilers couldn't get it tied. The Stars hit an empty net later on, and bam, we have ourselves a victory for Dallas. Jason Robertson, who hadn't scored 10 goals, bounced back nicely with his best game in quite some time with a hat trick. It certainly helped playing with his top centerman, Roope Hintz. Hintz had missed the last few games to start this series, and was a huge part of that Dallas lineup. He plays in all situations and is their top centerman. And you can look at Robertson's season, and you can't say that he absolutely needs Hintz to perform and produce, but he does play a heck of a lot better with him on that line. Robertson's a pure scorer, finisher, and if he doesn't have the right line mates to distribute the puck to him, then he's not going to get his looks. He's still being, quietly productive, you could say, picking up more assists, and still was close to a point per game player in these playoffs. So it's not like he really had struggled that hardcore, but he wasn't getting his opportunities to score like he normally does. And he found a way last night, and it completely changed the game. So we'll see if the Oilers can bounce back tomorrow in game number 4. Game 4 goes tonight in the Eastern Conference Final between the Rangers and the Panthers, with Florida trying to knot this one up in 2 while the series is still down in Sunrise. Florida is making a couple of lineup changes that we know of tonight. Nick Cousins and Ryan Lomberg are going to be taken out of the lineup, and veteran Kyle Okposo and Stephen Lawrence are going in. To be honest, I'm a little surprised to see lineup changes from Florida, because even though they lost the last game, they were by far the better team and played a really strong game. Like, I don't think there was really too much more you could do in that case. I mean, the what they call the deserve to win meter was greatly pointed in Florida's direction, but the Rangers just found a way and stuck with it. And Shesterkin, even though he let in more goals than usual, still held the fort and was phenomenal when required. So at the end of the day, we'll see if Florida can get things tied up here tonight. We'll see how that goes. Some other news around the league, lots of news to talk about. First up, big signing in San Jose. Top prospect and 4th overall pick in last year's draft, Will Smith, has signed his entry-level contract with San Jose. He did 1 year of U.S. college hockey at Boston College, had a phenomenal campaign. Now they're tearing it up. Was a finalist for the Hobey Baker Award, and just absolutely didn't have a whole lot left there to kind of accomplish. But there was still some talk that he and a few other prospects from that draft class, especially a few of them that are his teammates, may return to school, because as much as they might not have individually had a lot left to prove, Boston College was a favorite to win the national championship, and they fell short, so they felt like they had some unfinished business. But obviously with the Sharks winning the draft lottery, I think that's kind of played a role here. There was talk earlier in the offseason that Will Smith likely would return to school, but knowing that Macklin Celebrini is likely going to be a Shark and going to the NHL next year, then certainly that made a difference probably for Will Smith to want to sign now. So certainly, they may not be dominant yet, but to have Celebrini and Smith as your top two centers down the middle, this Sharks team is going to be a lot more fun to watch, and they're certainly going to be a lot more competitive. And once these guys get some experience behind them, they're going to be a dominant 1-2 punch and be a big help to get this team turned around. Now all attention kind of turns to Smith's teammate at Boston College, Ryan Leonard, who also had a phenomenal campaign. He was a Washington Capitals prospect. Leonard was likely going to return to Boston College, but that was also under the expectation that his line mate and friend Will Smith was going as well. You got to wonder if there's a change there, if he'll end up signing with Washington after all, now that this decision has been made. So we'll see what the future holds for him. But for now, Will Smith is heading to the NHL. We also got some other Sharks news as well. Of course, they're still looking to fill their head coaching role. Marco Sturn, of course, who has connections to the organization, currently the AHL head coach for the Los Angeles Kings Ontario Reign farm team, has interviewed for the role and is considered arguably the leading contender right now. Hard to say for sure. They're definitely talking to a few other people, but right now the Sharks do kind of look like they're leaning that way. So we'll see what happens there. Not sure. We don't have a timeline on when they're expected to announce their head coach, but I would think it shouldn't be too much longer into the future. Of course, we got huge news today in Columbus. Of course, we talked in the last day or two about the rumors of Don Waddell possibly landing in Columbus, and everything was officially announced today. Now we know his title, and we have a better idea on what's all transpiring in Columbus. So we learned today that Don Waddell will indeed, as rumored, have the top job managing hockey operations. So his official title is President, General Manager, and alternate governor. So he runs the whole show. Now, we know in Columbus, the ownership group there and John McConnell like to have more of a hands-off approach and let their hockey people run the show, which will be a little different for Waddell and something I think he's going to be fond of, and it'd be a nice change for him considering how hands-on Tom Dundon was in Carolina. Certainly going to be compensated nicely, more so than he ever was in Carolina as well. John Davidson, who was the longtime president there, is going to be stepping back and changing his role to being a senior advisor. So essentially, Waddell will replace JD, take on the role of general manager, which is expected to be temporary. At some point here and throughout the rest of the offseason, it is quite likely and expected that Waddell will bring in another member of the front office staff who will act as GM. But we'll see how that goes. Of course, we're still wondering as well the future of head coach Pascal Vincent. That very well could be coming soon once the decision's made. But for right now, Don Waddell is running the entire show. So like I said, it's a nice change for him. And we'll see who else he brings in. There's still lots of talk and rumors that Ken Holland and Ken Holland's son might be going to Columbus as well. Of course, Holland and Waddell do know each other well and how to work together in the past. So we'll see what happens there, but the Don Waddell news is official, and now we know his title. The Seattle Kraken today also confirmed their new head coach, and the rumors were true. It is Dan Bylsma, who was currently the head coach for their AHL farm team in Coachella Valley, where he's done a phenomenal job with the Firebirds, and they're set to open the Western Conference final in the American Hockey League. So again, having another strong year and deep playoff run. So Dan Bylsma will become the next head coach here in Seattle. So, of course, there's lots of talk as well about filling out his staff. So we'll have to see what else there. There is an assistant coach opening on the bench. So there is some talk that one of his assistant coaches in Coachella Valley will have an opportunity for promotion, whether it be within the AHL team or at the NHL level, by Jessica Campbell, who's been the first full-time female coach in the American Hockey League, who's been working with Bylsma as an assistant coach there in Coachella Valley, who's very well respected, has had a great run in coaching since she stopped her own playing days, of course, back former Team Canada national player, has been coaching for some time now, and has got a lot of accolades in doing so. She very well will have an opportunity to either become the head coach at Coachella Valley, which would be a first to see a female in that role, or it's also possible, because she is being considered, according to Bylsma, for moving up to the NHL with him as well and being an NHL assistant coach on the bench. So, of course, that's not a common thing. That's obviously would be, either way, an opportunity to be the first here, break some more barriers. So we'll see. Jessica Campbell, like I said, is a very well-respected up-and-comer in the world of hockey coaching, so I suspect it's a matter of time before she gets her opportunity, but it sounds like Seattle will definitely be promoting her in some capacity. We just don't know exactly where that's going to be. They have to make some more decisions before we know that. Some other news as well. The St. Louis Blues today also announced they've signed one of their prospects, and that's 2022 third-round pick Alexander Kaskamaki. Signs a 3-year entry-level contract and will now officially be in the Blues system. Now, we also got word today on something that I think could become a major story. It's an update through Glenn McGregor, a news reporter, talking about the John Tavares battle with Canada Revenue Agency over a tax reassessment. So, of course, we know that John Tavares has this on his contract. It's very much heavily weighted for most of his income being paid as signing bonus, with the actual salary being under $1 million. There is a tax law that allows bonuses to be taxed differently than regular income. Now, of course, where he's living and playing in Ontario, would be, I believe it's 33% plus the provincial tax rate that he would pay on his regular income. But the tax portion on the bonuses with this tax treaty is only 15%, which is applicable to whether it be athletes, artists, musicians, etc. But the argument here from Canada Revenue Agency is that the way his contract is structured is that this bonus is basically the same as regular income. I mean, obviously, Tavares' claim, or his argument here, is that it's not regular income and it should be taxed at 15%, which is how his taxes would have been filed and submitted. So after the reassessment, they're saying, no, that's not the case. It should be regular income. So clearly, if they win this battle with JT, it's going to have a major impact on a lot of other players. You think that there's a possibility you could see Canada Revenue end up reassessing several players who play in Canadian cities and have signing bonuses as part of their contracts. There's a reason why NHL players want their contracts structured the way they are. Part of the signing bonus feature also allows them to have, I guess you could say, lockout proof or work stoppage proof type of contract structure, so that they're getting paid that bonus no matter what. Part of the argument from Canada Revenue is that ultimately, if he decides to withhold his services, or if there was a labor stoppage of some sort, that he would only be entitled to a prorated version of that income. So it's not like he would be entitled to keep all of it regardless. So they don't consider it to be a true bonus. And that's based on the verbiage and how his contract is legally structured. So at the end of the day, I think Canada Revenue Agency sounds like they're pretty convinced that they found a loophole here, that this should not be taxed the way it is. Now, at this rate, there's no appeal date set yet for tax court, which is something that will be done. We'll have to wait and see how things go along. But like I said, if this ends up going against Tavares and Canada Revenue wins their case here, he's going to end up owing about an extra $8 million in taxes, which is a substantial amount of money. And at the same time, like I said, you got to wonder, what does this mean for other players, not only with their past taxation years that could be reassessed, and players could end up owing a bunch more money that they didn't expect, but you have to think of the effect and impact on everything moving forward, especially teams like Toronto Maple Leafs, who probably utilize the signing bonus more than most teams. Some of the Canadian teams, like Winnipeg, Ottawa, Calgary, like some of the smaller teams, they don't pay out nearly as much in signing bonus. In some cases, very little of their player income are paid out through that structure. But it's some teams use it, and some teams use it as a selling feature, right? Because not only do they feel like that income can be taxed differently and lower, so there's that advantage, but then they get a lot of it as a lot of their yearly income as a lump sum payment on July 1st, or unless it's a different date specified in the contract. So they get more money up front. If there's a work stoppage, they still get, they still can get paid. And the only way he's not getting paid is if he withholds services, or if he, retires or something unexpected, right? So as long as he holds up his part of the bargain, he's getting that money. That's why they do it that way. They save taxes. They get the money up front, so they don't have to wait for it. And of course, the sooner you get your money, you can start putting your money into making you more money by investing in and whatever. So it allows them to be, sound strategists that way from a financial perspective, and at the same time, pay less tax. So if Canada Revenue Agency wins this battle, it's going to have a major effect not only on Tavares and his pocketbook, but a lot of other players that play in Canada with the higher profile contracts that have these types of bonuses. So we'll see where this goes. No word yet when the court date's going to be. So we'll follow this story along, because it could have a major impact on players playing in Canada that are Canadian citizens or living here and paying taxes here. So we'll see. Now, as I mentioned, could there be a significant trade between the Flames and the Kings? I come across this trade idea online through social media, looked through a few articles that were talking about it. And there is an argument to be made. It does make some sense, and I just want to talk about it here today to see what everybody thinks. But could there be a deal between LA and Calgary, swapping the right now what looks to be bad contracts for Jonathan Huberdeau and Pierre-Luc Dubois? Now, they both signed 8-year contracts, and they're both, still early in that contract. Obviously, there's lots of time left, 7 years on each side. So Jonathan Huberdeau, his cap hit is $10.5 million. Pierre-Luc Dubois is $8.5 million. So obviously, if there was going to be a trade, I would suspect the easy thing here to even out the money is that Calgary retains a little bit to even things out. But at the end of the day, we both know that we know that both players have not lived up to these contracts so far and have had a horrible start to their time with their new teams. There was times this year when Dubois was on the fourth line. Certainly, you could make an argument about utilization. You could also make a big effort around effort and just not fitting in, so to speak. Whereas same goes for Huberdeau, right? I mean, Jonathan Huberdeau has had 2 years now in Calgary, and it's just not worked out. He looked like he was bouncing back this year, but still at the end of the day, his production is nowhere near what it was in Florida. Now, I think both teams, if they swap these players, they could get them in completely different roles here. For example, Jonathan Huberdeau could become more what he was in Florida. Like he was used to running shotgun and playing on the line with Barkov. He set up a lot of goals. He was more of the playmaker and the play driver on that line when he played a lot with Barkov and another winger. Jonathan Huberdeau could join that first line with Kopitar and Kempe and suddenly maybe find that same sort of effect that he had with the Panthers. We know that Kopitar plays a similar type game to Barkov, very solid two-way game. Adrian Kempe is a great finisher, scores lots of goals. Could Jonathan Huberdeau be that top six forward to complement that line? Obviously, Huberdeau has a no-move clause, so he would have to agree to this trade. Pierre-Luc Dubois would not have to do that as of right now. He does have a no-move clause built into his contract, but it does not take effect until July 1st. So if this happened ahead of that, Dubois would have no say in the matter. So obviously, now a big benefit for Dubois. He gets out of LA, gets a fresh start, and suddenly you can move him into being more of a top six role again with the Calgary Flames that he really should have had with the Los Angeles Kings, but has not. The other couple things that this allows the Kings to do by moving Dubois to Calgary, they bring in Huberdeau, who is a winger instead of a center. He could play in the top line, try to get him going with Kempe and Kopitar. Then you can move Quinton Byfield to center. You still have Philip Deneau. I mean, getting Byfield to center longer term is still something that's important and something they're expected to do. But then you can move Byfield to center right away. You can put him in that 2C spot, move Deneau to the 3C spot. You still got some other good wingers, of course, besides Huberdeau and Kempe. You've got Kevin Fiala. You've got Trevor Moore. They obviously will probably still look for another body or two to kind of round things out in the lineup here as they decide on next year's team. But certainly, it would be a case where Huberdeau could really fit in, and it also has other spin-off effects to help other members of the team like Byfield get to that center spot. We've seen how much he emerged this year and how much he's improved and stepped forward. So to me, that would make a lot of sense for the Los Angeles Kings. From the Calgary perspective, they get to move on from Huberdeau, and they get Dubois, who's a different type of player. He can play center. He could be that number 2 guy behind Nazem Kadri. Still have some good wingers. Hopefully drive play like you would hope he can. Find a way to revitalize his career. And then at the same time, you could also move him to wing on that top line to play with Kadri if you wanted or felt it was the best spot for him. But at the end of the day, it's all about fresh start, new beginnings, and getting both contracts, kind of rehabilitated, so to speak, so that the players are playing better, so that the deals don't look so bad. It would be an easy, money-wise to figure out. You just have Calgary retain a little bit so that the money's evened out. It's just, really, it's all that simple. So, certainly it's a complicated deal in a sense because you have two big-time players with two big-time contracts not working out. I mean, think back to when you've seen Edmonton and Calgary swap James Neal and Milan Lucic. It's obviously a different level, but it's the same sort of trade. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. I mean, at this point in each player's tenure with their team, maybe they don't want to give up on them just yet. I would think Huberdeau would be more likely to be moved from that perspective because they've had him in Calgary a little bit longer. But at the same time, Dubois only had 1 year in LA. We got a new coach coming in here with Jim Hiller, who took over partway through last year. Dubois had a good run with Canada at the World Championships. I think they utilized him more so on the wing. Had him in a bit of a different role than you've seen with LA, and he thrived. I think that bigger ice is also good for him to be more productive too. So interesting concept for sure. Not a given that each of these guys goes on to tear it up with their new clubs, but I do think that each of them would be in a better predicament to better serve their careers and their contracts to have more success by being moved. I mean, I think at this point, Calgary's probably more willing to pull the trigger than LA would. Like I said, LA's only had 1 year of Dubois, but I know there was a lot of frustrations earlier in the year. Some of the issues with Dubois sometimes does look like it boils down to effort, and I know that drives a lot of teams crazy, and it has in the past with Columbus and with Winnipeg, and now here we are with Los Angeles. So certainly it would be a fourth team for a young player in Dubois, only a third team for the older, more mature and experienced Huberdeau. Obviously, the difference in age might play a role in their decision-making here too, but you got to wonder if this kind of swap would benefit both sides. I personally see how it could work. Doesn't mean it's the perfect match, though. Let me know what you think down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.